I can settle down and be doing just fine till I hear an old freight rolling down the line.
Thank you. We're on air, so well, not on air. We're on record. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for coming to our humble little podcast studio.
That's a pleasure. Thanks for having me along.
I think you're pretty busy. You're in the throes of promoting a book by the looks of things.
Yeah, flat out. When your book comes out, you've got about 2 months of really heavy promotion that you need to do to make sure it sells, and try and get a bit of momentum into sales. So, I think I've got 2 or 3 events a week for the next 2 months.
Yeah, right.
That's sort of interstate here as well, and all around Victoria. So it's great. I love it. It's a great opportunity to get out and actually talk to people about the thing you've been sweating over for 3 years.
Yeah, absolutely. 3 years. So is that average time it takes to write a book, or is that just this one? Or
it's pretty average. This one actually, it's only 18 months since my last book came out, that this one's come out, but I was writing this one while I was editing the last one. So you kind of double up like that. And while I was editing the one that's out now, I began a new one as well. Once you're on the Ferris wheel, you just got to keep going, keep churning over, or you get left behind pretty easily. People forget who you are, or because there's so many books coming out.
I've got to say, it sounds more like a hamster wheel than a Ferris wheel to me, mate. That sounds like solid work.
Well, that's true.
This is full time for you, right?
It is full time,
I figured it was.
Yes.
It's virtually impossible to make a living as a writer in Australia solely on writing, but because my first 4 books were for young adults, they are on curriculum in schools all around the country. So that's my earner. That's how I make a living, and through the books selling, obviously, and also I do a lot of work in schools. I do probably 60 or 70 schools a year, going in, doing writing workshops and talking about my books, and having come from a teaching background, that's pretty easy work for me.
Yes, You're comfortable with the classroom. You understand the pedagogy or whatever it's called. What's it called? That stuff.
Learning.
Yeah, obviously. And teaching.
So you're right about the noise, like the amount of books out there now, right? We went to Aries Inlet on Sunday and went into the bookshop there and heard good things about that. That is a bookshop, but particularly in the space you're playing in, that young adult space and in the crime space, they've got like dedicated walls now for those 2 sections. They're massively popular, aren't they?
They are, and it's an incredibly competitive market. So young adult, selling into that market, that's getting harder and harder because obviously kids have got screens and they live on their screens, and your job as a young adult writer is to try to distract them from their screens long enough to get lost in your book, and to get through to the end of it. And in the adult space, it's incredibly competitive. There'll be, I don't know how many books would come out on the same date as mine towards the end of each month. So mine came out on the 26th of May, and there'd be a number in my space that I write. I don't call it crime, I call it thrillers, psychological thrillers that I write into.
Fiction.
Fiction.
Fiction,
and at the same time, there'll be crime books coming out and romance books coming out and lit fiction books coming out. So it's you've got to do something to stand out from the pack, and generally that means getting out, and in particular just going into bookshops, just talking to booksellers, because they will make or break your book. They will. It's hand selling, which is just critical to the success of your book, and they won't hand sell a book if they don't know you and they don't know the book.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that, because that's kind of like, well, it was a bit like selling beer, it's a completely different product, obviously, but it was the same concept. If the retailers might put the book on the shelf or put the beer on the shelf, but if they're not actually recommending to their customers, it's just going to sit there.
And I guarantee you went and you would tell them a story. You'd tell them a story about where's this beer come from, or how do we craft this? And it's the same with the book. I tell them a story, and that's what they tell their customer when they come in and they're looking for a recommendation. They say, "Oh, this bloke was in recently. Have a look at this. Try this beer. Now he made it in this particular way," and that's the same with us. They grab it off the shelf and they say, "Listen, this this bloke was in here before, you know, he's an English teacher and it's written into this market, and I think it's a really good story, and they retell the story a little bit, and that's how you make your sales.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about online sales, Mark, in that context then. How does that work? Where does it fit? And
completely different market.
Yes.
And you'll always have we get our sales figures the same as you would when you're selling beer. You get your sales figures and you know how you're going. It's always divided up into your hard copy sales. So that's actual physical books that you sell in bookshops. Your audio sales, which are getting bigger and bigger.
As in audio books.
Audio books.
Yes.
And then you've got your ebooks on top of that, and the ebooks. And then you've got the ones where people are buying physical books online. Through things like Amazon.
Yes.
So there's all these different sectors of the market that you're trying to sell into, and to get the word out into. It's much harder unless you get, and now, as an example, like in about the 2 or 3 months before your book comes out, there's a whole community out there of book bloggers. Book bloggers. So these are people on social media.
Righto.
They're on TikTok and they're on Instagram and they're on Facebook, and they are all like book influencers, if you like. So the publishers are bombarding them. They're sending out, here's our new one that's coming out, so that by the time your book comes out, it's already talk about it. There's already been posts about it, and they play a critical role now in the sales of your book.
And there's podcasts, of course, there too. So people talking about on podcasts, and it's a changed landscape, isn't it? As far as
it is a changed landscape. Where joke among the writing community that I actually know someone that doesn't have a podcast. I mean, I obviously keep an eye on who's doing what in podcast space, and like just now, it's crazy. You think, how would anyone ever find our podcast? Because there is a podcast on every conceivable subject you can even think of. I think of a podcast, anything, and I guarantee I'd be able to find one on. Is that space dominated by the true crime stuff?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There is. Although I feel like it's backed off a little bit. It was for a while there. It was like that was all you could just about find. The new podcast was true crime.
And sort of serialised. You remember they do episode after episode of a true crime event, through a podcast, detailed podcast. It was a lot of that.
I mean, we had a Richard Baker on. Remember,
that's right.
Who is a podcast specialist. He's not long released a new one, actually. I think so.
And in some of those, they're unsolved crimes, and they're trying to gather information as they go as well to maybe help solve that crime.
Sort of cold cases. Yes,
cold
often.
Cases.
Yes.
I mean, Richard's a Walkley Award-winning journalist, so he's not just somebody who's just picked up a microphone and he's actually got some cred behind him. So do you want to, before we start, I'm really keen to delve into the writing process. You talked, I'm really fascinated by that.
And I want to talk about the current book at some stage too.
Let's talk about that now.
Let's do that.
Otherwise we might lose that. So let's talk about that.
The new book is called Where Truth Ends. It's a psychological thriller. And it writes into a space where it's not crime. But it sort of builds tension all the way through, and it revolves around a young climate activist named Meg, who gets involved with this secretive environmental organisation. Even their identities are secret from each other inside the organisation.
Okay.
She takes part in this huge protest in the middle of Melbourne, peak hour. Truck blocks the intersection of Swanson Street and Flinders Street. They're all in hazmat suits and goggles, so they're all unidentifiable, and they sort of hold up traffic for a while, and then they just disperse into the city, and half an hour after they leave the truck, it explodes. There's a massive explosion in the centre of Melbourne. So these young activists are on the run, being hunted as terrorists. The centre's on this one young activist, Meg Ma, and she has no idea what has happened.
Yes.
Absolutely no idea. But she can't identify anyone.
No.
She doesn't even have any information to trade with the police if she hands herself in.
Yes.
That's one layer that it works on it. The other layer is that she goes to her family. She goes to her dad in particular. And so it's told from two points of view. It's told from her point of view and her dad's point of view. And of course, by confiding in her dad, he becomes an accessory to the crime that she's being accused of. So in my writing, I love that idea of a moral dilemma. Like, what would you do if your kid came to you and said, "Dad, I've been caught up in this situation." Would you hand them in? What would you advise them to do? Would you try and protect them? Would you try and get them out of the country?
How far would you go?
Yeah, how far would you go?
To protect your child. Obviously, you want to do what you could. So how far could you go without?
So I
would you break the law?
Yeah, that's right. Would you break the law?
Would you break the law for your child?
And I love that idea of putting the reader into the skin of the people that are faced with those dilemmas and ask themselves, God, what would I actually do? My previous book, Three Boys Gone, began on...
And it was Three Boys Gone as not young adult. This was adult.
No, this is adult again. Yeah.
So that was my first... So the lad's one's adult as well. Gotcha.
So the last two, Three Boys Gone and Where Truth Ends, both adult psychological thrillers. The moral dilemma in the first one was I've worked in outdoor education for 30 years, and on an outdoor education trip in the book, 3 teenage boys run ahead of their bushwalking group, throw themselves into a wild sea, and all 3 of them get swept out. And when their teacher arrives on the scene, she makes a decision not to attempt to rescue them, and all 3 boys drown. She knows if she goes in, she'll die as well. There'll be 4 people dead instead of 3. But then, of course, she's got to justify that to grieving parents, to the police, to the coroner, to a school, to a partner, to herself, and it kind of builds in that way. So I like to draw on as much of my own experience as I can in my writing, because I think it gives the writing real authenticity.
Yes.
I think you get a strong sense when you're writing a book whether the writer is writing into a space that they know or not, or whether they've just done the research, Googled some stuff and tried to cobble together a story. But there'll always be markers, there'll always be indicators of real lived experience in those ones that I think are really well written.
I think you're right, and I can recognise what you're talking about in some written works where often around rural and farm settings, because I'm a farm kid, right? So and I love reading, so I read a lot, and I'm reading stuff and I go, this is this person's never been out of the city. Like, that does not happen. That's never happened. That's all myth, and you can't. That's fine if it's not meant to be serious, but you just take it serious. So you can see it, can't you? Whereas, as you're saying, you've got the lived experience in that field. You're going to be more confident. It's going to come through with more confidence for the reader. I agree. I can see that.
And you often write in the local landscape. Is that?
I do.
Yeah. So that's helpful too, because you can actually visualise. You can go out and walk amongst it. You can.
I always say, why would you go and create a fictional coastal town when I live in one? If that's going to be my setting, as it was for the first 3 young adult books, then great. You'd name it something else, and but you're basically writing into a really familiar space. And not only that, like, again, it's an example of sometimes I think you can tell in books if they they're trying to generate a setting, like it might be a coastal town as an example, and it's like they've gone and visited a coastal town for a day, and then they haven't lived in it. They haven't experienced in different conditions, or in the middle of winter, or
it's like a photograph of it. It's like a 2-dimensional image. I know exactly what you're saying.
You've been there on a long weekend, dozens of tourists are there.
There's nothing behind it. It's almost just like a facade.
You'd have found the same with stuff on farms. It's pretty obvious where they've just gone and maybe observed for a bit. They might have had a little farm stay on a holiday, somewhere. But that's about as far as they've gotten. They don't understand the nitty-gritty of it, or the nuances of it.
I think that sense of genuineness is really important in writing. You talked. I'm really interested in the characters. The character and how you get inside a character, because you talked before about you're writing at one point. You might have 3 books on the go, right, and in various different formats. So one you're just sort of starting out. One's pretty much finished the first draft, and the other you're working on the drafts. It must be. I guess you. Do you have to get it to a point where before you can start on the next one, or does your head just get filled with all these characters you just don't know? I've tried running 3 like that before. I can't do it. So 2, I'm generally working on 2 books at one time.
And generally by the time you start, in the actual creative process of starting a new book, you're on the editing process. It's a different
the
part
story's
of the
told.
brain that you're using.
Okay.
The story's told and you're just making it work better
Yep.
as opposed to creating something entirely new.
So you're thinking more technical rather than creative.
Absolutely. It uses a different part of the brain.
That's how you can separate. That's how you can do the two at the one time because
Yeah.
they're different things.
definitely.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And where do you reckon those characters come from? Like, you talk about, your life that you live and, come to taking from personal experience, but I mean, you take it from other, like, I'm not saying stealing characters, but I'm saying getting inspiration from other books, from films, from, music. Where do you take all these history?
Yes, all of us. It is. I look at it like it's very difficult to write a completely unique story that no one's ever read before, and that's because we're all a product of the books that we read, and all of those. The analogy I use is that the writer. Your story is a nest, and you're picking up bits and pieces from here and here and here and here and here, and you're building that nest, and that's your story. And for me, ideas can come from anywhere. I'll give you an example in a minute, but it can be, it can just be in terms of, it might be just a song lyric that I've heard or a misheard song lyric or, anything I've overheard. I'm a chronic eavesdropper of conversations in public, people talking on their phones on public transport. I'm there just taking down notes because that's gold. That's absolute
Nobody
gold.
ever turns around and goes, what the fuck are you doing?
That's right. No.
Because
this person's there. I don't even have to interview them. They're just giving me all these details about their life. And the beauty of that is I can't hear what the person on the other end said. I can imagine anything going on at the other end. And so it is a little leap of imagination from lived situations, but then a leap in imagination. So as an example, the first 3 books that I wrote were actually dystopian, but they were set in effectively Anglesey, but in a dystopian landscape. So you take what you know and then you stretch it and you pull it to that point of almost credibility, and that's the space that you're writing into in dystopian in particular. So even though it is dystopian, there's so much of me in it. There's so much of kids that I know in it. There's dogs and surfing is a very big part of what I write. So those things. It's kind of like you're basing it on lived experience and then you're pulling it apart and thinking, how can I make something bigger out of this one experience that I might have had? And sometimes a lot of my best writing is done away from the desk. It's just when I'm doing something, it's just muscle memory, like I'm riding the bike or I'm walking the dog or I'm swimming or surfing, whatever, and the whole time I'm
mentally
ticking
writing.
ticking over in the brain.
Yes, it's going working through, you're not putting the words down.
And how do you get that down and not forget?
You do have to get back pretty quickly. I'll give you a really good example of that. I'd written this short story and I never liked the start of it, and it was about a flood coming to a small country town. And I had 90% of the story written, but I just didn't have the start. I think, well, how can I? What's that sentence that's going to leap out off the page and pull my reader in right from the beginning? So I went out on the mountain bike and I was riding over through Umarella on the tracks over there, and I come barreling around a corner and there's this big tiger snake coming across the track, and I just stopped in time and I watched it. And I thought, that's it. And when I went home, and the first line of that story is, the water entered the room like a snake. And you just had this thing of the water seeping under the door and pooling underneath the dresser. And that's what I mean by you sometimes you need to be away from the desk to just come across and find those things. But you've got to be attuned to it too. You've got to be ready for it and not just dismiss things too quickly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You mentioned music. I realised that I've actually got a bit of your writing on my bookshelf. So I found that because I was doing some research on you, and that popped up. So we've got this Nick Cave songs reimagined, which I think is a fantastic concept. I think you're involved in the Paul Kelly one too, weren't you?
I was.
You may have had a bit more influence in that one, perhaps. Behind.
Both of these, the Paul Kelly one and the Nick Cave one. The idea came from a mate of mine, Neil White, who's a crime writer, but he lives in the US, and he came up with this idea: why don't we get people to take a song of a really popular songwriter and then use it as a springboard to write a short story? And he contacted myself and Jock Sarong, a writer from lives down Port Fairy.
Yeah.
And he said, listen, you guys, you got all these connections in the, in Melbourne writing scene. Do you reckon you could get writers interested in this concept? So I said, we'll have a go.
Yeah.
Jock and I had a go. And we started contacting the writers that we knew, and people just jumped on board.
Yeah.
And it was like, why hasn't someone thought of this before?
Yeah. Because sometimes that inspiration is the hardest thing to find. Like, if you're a professional writer, like you've got a bit more discipline and you find a way to sort of sit down and get it done. But like I dabble in a bit of writing, and sometimes it's just like it's so hard to pull out some inspiration when 90% of your time you're just living your normal life and doing your day job, and then you go, right, I want to write something.
Yeah, where do I
you just
start?
need that little spark.
Yeah.
And this is two of our greatest poets, really, aren't they? Songwriters and poets, Nick Cave and Paul Kelly.
Absolutely.
The thing that was really interesting with it was that they are both storytellers as well, though.
Yeah.
So a lot of those songs are actually stories in themselves.
Absolutely.
So we didn't want anyone to rewrite those stories.
Yeah.
We wanted them to use it as a springboard to go off from, and the story that I wrote for the Nick Cave one, I've always loved the song that he does called Love Letter. It's one of his kind of lesser known ones. And so I chose that one. And once you chose a song, no one else could use it for the anthology. So I put dibs on that one. Yeah. And at the time I was doing some writing workshops out at Barwon Prison. Manganese, and it was so it was in the protective custody division, where I was working with the rapists and the murderers and the drug kingpins and the people that'd be dead if they were in a regular jail, probably.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was reading stories that these men had written, and so so many of them were about longing and regret. And the hardest ones to read were the ones where their families had actually just cut off all contact. They had nothing. So I had that experience, and I was thinking about Love Letter, and then so I came up with this story of a guy who's released from jail, and he goes home and his wife's left, house is empty, and so the love letter is what he writes to her and tries to deliver to her. So that's an example of that lived experience that you got, and you think, okay, I've got this concept, and you mould it into that story. And I find that I love that sort of process of doing that. That's the beauty of the best part of writing for me is making the stuff up right at the very beginning, just being enjoying the process.
That's really interesting, Mark. Just listening to you talk about that. Now, I'm not certain, but I think a lyric in the song you're talking about is love letter, go get her, go get her.
Yeah, it is.
Which has always fascinated me, the idea of the letter. It's been travelling, you know.
Yeah.
And what you've interpreted, he's got looking for his missing wife via that travelling letter. I like it.
It's a beautiful song.
It is a beautiful song. It is a beautiful song. It might be on Love Ballads.
That might
be
the
album. I think. I think. But
Murder Ballads. Love Ballads.
No,
there is a love
ballads. I think. I think this one got Love Ballads. I think.
It's not on Murder Ballads.
No. I think.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, what did you grow up reading, Mark?
Well, see, this is an interesting thing for me because I grew up as a complete and utter non-reader.
Really?
No, I did not read books.
Wow.
And I often tell kids in schools when I'm doing presentations, by the age of 15, I don't think I'd read a book.
Wow.
Not a single book.
Oh,
and main reason being, like, I'm part of a big family. I'm one of 10 kids.
Yeah.
And we were never indoors. We lived our life outdoors. So my entire childhood was just riding my bike and riding horses and going skating and surfing and playing tennis and footy, and everything was outdoors. And I always associated reading with being indoors. Yeah. So I just didn't do it.
Yeah,
they literally did not do it. And it wasn't until I had a really bad horse riding accident when I was 15 and I broke my neck, unfortunately. Took a long period of rehabilitation then, and obviously this was pre-internet, and once I had catastrophic injuries, but once they started to heal, I had 6 months when I basically wasn't allowed to move. So, so it then my mum started going to the library and bringing me books to read.
Talk about sliding doors,
Yeah,
hey?
yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Like for something so bad to happen to you, to change your life, like literally for the rest of your life,
Yeah.
you know, and
Yeah, and often, kids, I always get the question from kids, if you didn't break your neck, would you be here today? And I say, absolutely not, because I was all organised. I was leaving school on the day I turned 16, and I was going to get an apprenticeship. That was it, plumbing, carpentry. I didn't care.
Everything
As long
like
as I
trying to fund your lifestyle to be active.
That's
and
right.
Be outside.
Yeah. And so that accident, like, literally changed the course of my life. And by the time I got back to school, it took me 6 months. I reckon I'd gone from 0 books to at least 15, 20 books that I'd read. And because I was 15, I progressed really quickly.
Yes.
So I was reading Steinbeck and Hemingway and all these. And I went back to school and what it just changed my perspective on life, I suppose. Number one, having survived the accident, because my parents always said, listen, you got to make every single day count because you're not supposed to be here. I broke my C3, and it didn't just break it, I shattered it. Yes. So there's bone fragments, and it was horrific. So I had to make every day count after that, and the reading then on top of that really changed the direction of my life, and ended up going through finishing school, going to uni, studying teaching, became a teacher, became an English teacher of all things. But what that did was it always gave me an insight as a writer into kids who don't think they are readers. And I see it all the time. I'm not a reader. I don't like it. And to me, that just means they haven't found that one book. Not yet. That's right.
Not
yeah,
yet.
yeah.
Not yet.
I remember the first book that Mum gave me.
Yeah.
I remember what it was. It was Storm Boy by Colin Teal.
Wow,
And it was like, and it was just like this opening up of the world to me,
Yeah.
And now it's really interesting because I love that, and I loved anything to do with places that I was familiar with. So the coastal, the Coorong that was in, and I fell in love with My Brother Jack by George Johnson. That wartime stuff I loved, and he was a great storyteller. So it was like transformative, really. But I also I know what it is for those kids that. And we call them reluctant readers. Generally, they're just non-readers. And now, of course, there's on top of all their sport and stuff, they've got screens as well, so it's even harder again.
Yeah, harder to get them to pick up a physical book and sit and read it. And I don't know. I'm old school, so I still feel like there's something more engaging about holding a physical book than on a screen. I struggle to read on a screen, and I know some people. Look, if it means they're reading rather than not reading, then read it on a screen. Well, by all means, but there's still something really tangible.
We do
about
actually
carrying a book around.
we know this from studies that the brain responds differently to written word on a page than it does to on a screen. We spend our life on screens, and the last thing I want to do is read a novel or fiction on a screen. I want something I can hold in the hands. I know where I'm up to. I can slip the bookmark in. And the only time that I use a Kindle for reading, because I read a lot now, is when I'm travelling. Because it's just
I'm
purely
exactly the same. The Kindle it's so easy when you travel. My wife and I are retired now, and we travel a lot. And I've always read a lot when I was working. And I had time off. I'd just devour novels. In that break between work, those 4 weeks I was away, I would just read them, and I'd take a stack of novels. So that habit has sort of rolled over. But into the Kindle now, when we're away and on the road for a number of weeks, you can take that one Kindle and load down. Whatever books you want and rip through them. It's easy. But it's the only time I do it. I never pick it up at home. Now,
so you're a man of a certain age, you're retired.
Yes.
What do you read? What are your interests? Because, the stereotype is, men just read, they just read biographies and sports stuff.
Not me at all. I'm a very, very eclectic reader. I'm reading Colb Tabane at the moment, the Irish writer. I love Hemingway. I could just sit and reread Hemingway all the time. You mentioned Hemingway before. Classics. I love Tim Winton, Carey, so the great Australian writers. Scott, the American writer whose novels you long to meet.
McCarthy.
No, the older one, Cormac McCarthy. I love the other guy, the earlier
Scott Fitzgerald.
No.
No. Where's the foot?
You go.
Did I let you?
Yeah, the writer, Brighton Rock. Is he American or is he English?
British. Yeah.
Sorry.
Graham Greene.
Graham Greene.
Yeah.
Graham Greene, but I started off a late reader, not unlike yourself. I was sort of halfway through secondary school before, for the same reasons, on a farm, footy, cricket farm, 7 kids, one of 7, very still, So I was all going, and then I sort of...
Yeah, it's funny. I was sort of the opposite because I always remember reading, and I was one of 4, but I was 4 years older than the next one, so I was the oldest. So I was almost like an only child for quite a long time. And I was probably a bit of a loner as well, so I did like my own company, so I read a lot, but I started very simple. So I remember, like, I love Peanuts, you know what I mean, because I'm a visual person as well, so I love this, like, this American culture that was quite different. I wasn't immersing myself in stuff that I was familiar with. I was immersing myself, and so as I got a bit older, I was reading, like, say, early teens maybe, or even younger. Not younger than that, probably 8, 9, 10, whatever. I was reading Hardy Boys, and I couldn't get enough Hardy Boys. I would devour Hardy Boys, and then in the town I was reading Conan. So I was reading stuff that was quite fanciful and different, and imagining these completely different worlds. And it probably wasn't until I got into, towards uni that I started reading literature and found Tim Winton and Peter Carey and then started reading the heavier stuff as well, But you're right. I mean, it's typical to think blokes just read biographies and sports biographies and stuff, but it's
interesting.
I mean, that's why we like talking about this stuff on this podcast, right?
Yeah, look, a lot of insight into the publishing world at the moment. I've got an agent who's, obviously he's got his finger in every single pie. And it is true that the demographic for fiction in particular and crime is middle-aged women. That's where that falls. But that doesn't mean that men don't read it, and that so I think we need to broaden that. It's not just I don't think it's just the demographic of I'm certainly not writing towards that audience. I'm writing for a much more general audience, and that sort of comes out in the nuances that in the writing and the particular phrases that I might use, or I'm actually trying to get into heads all the way along the spectrum, not just that demographic that we're told, they're the only ones that buy books, because I don't think it's just not true.
Are you able to read now for recreation, just to relax? You're so busy writing, you may not get time to just go, you know what, I just want to have a really good read. And if you do, what do you read? I
read every day.
Yes,
every day. I try and read for an hour at least every day.
You do.
And I read at the moment. One of the problems when you get a little bit of success is that you get asked to endorse other people's books. So publishers are forever saying, "Send me, can you just say some nice words about this, and we'll put it on the cover." So I don't mind doing that, but I'm starting to cut back on it because I just haven't got time, and I'm not. As indicated with your question, I'm not necessarily reading the things that I'm choosing to read.
Correct. You haven't got much time in your life, have you?
That's
right. So many books. Even I know that. I'm not working now, and even I still can't read enough.
And even, I'm also part of a broader writing community, and I want to support my fellow writers. And that comes back as well because you have a book out. You need some people to say some nice things about your book as well. We send copies out, and I've been very lucky in the past. I've had fantastic people. Jane Harper endorsed on the cover of Three Boys Gone, and Sally Hepworth's on this one, and Michael Brissenden, and a whole heap of of these really well recognised Australian writers, and they're all people that I've met and that I've done stuff with, or I've interviewed, so it's a really supportive community. But it means you've got to be across their stuff as well. And I also do a lot of interviewing. So, and I love interviewing other writers. It's particular skills involved in it, but I just love the opportunity to pick the brain of another writer.
Do you do that on a podcast? Do you do it?
I do it at live events. So at festivals, in libraries, bookshop events.
So conversation.
You
see you're having a conversation with it in front of an audience. Wonderful. Okay.
And similar to what I'm sure what you two are very good at is a lot of interviewing is about listening.
Yeah.
It's about
Yeah.
being very, and just not having your prescribed questions and just keep going back to them, but to listen to the person you're interviewing and pick up
Follow that down.
And most writers are pretty good speakers. Not all of them, but most. We've got used to this idea, and now I think also that publishers, I think, are a little more reluctant to take on writers who can't actually help publicise the book as well. So unless you're like even Tim Winton tours, when a book comes out. And I reckon he's a great speaker. He's very taciturn, kind of.
He's quirky.
He's quirky.
Yeah.
He likes his own company too, I think.
I suspect
But
so.
he also understands the importance of it. He understands the business of it. He's been in it long enough today. He's probably recognised the difference between doing it and not doing it. He's probably had instances where he's not done it and gone, okay, shit, next time I better do it.
I get a sense he doesn't want to do it. I do, but I like it.
I
like that.
He's
very honest.
Kind of reluctance.
I like it. I like his reluctance.
I think it was when, I think it might have been Dirt Music when it came out. And it was at Melbourne Town Hall. It was sold out. Tim Winton. And it was one of those things where you pay $50 but you get a copy of the book, so they're automatic book sales there. But he was being interviewed by, I don't know, it was Michael Williams or someone like that, and there were times when I just couldn't help but laugh, because Garrett, he was taking the piss. Absolutely. And he was just being really sort of, and I'm getting shushed by all these people.
You're enjoying the show.
No, you're missing the point here, And I think he does. I think he kind of engages on a different level there as well. I love that.
Fair enough. I do too. I think fair enough. If you're as successful as he is and as good as he is at what he does, he can be whoever he wants to be in that scenario.
And he'd still go and use those opportunities to promote, causes he wants to promote, like Ingaloo and these sorts of things. So he also recognises an opportunity to do that.
He has a great saying that I use again and again, and people ask him, "What's your obligation as a writer?" And he said, "Well, in the situation that we're in the world at the moment, he personally, this is for him. He says, my obligation is not to look away." And to write into that space.
And hence his latest.
We didn't quite get to what you're currently reading, though. I enjoyed that context. So what do you choose to read?
I read principally female writers, Australian female writers, fiction, principally fiction.
Yes,
and
I'm really glad you said that, because when you finish, I've got somewhere to go with this.
Okay.
So. A couple that I could mention, like Tony Jordan is one of Australia. I think one of Australia's just been longlisted for the Miles Franklin for a book named Tenderfoot, which is this beautiful story about her dad being a greyhound trainer in Brisbane in the 1970s.
Oh, wow,
It is gold. It's absolute gold. And it actually
writing these down. Right?
It actually began because Tony Jordan contributed a story to the Nick Cave one about greyhounds, about this family of greyhounds, and the novel actually grew from writing that short story. And that's just, it is just, and Tony Jordan is one of those beloved writers in the writing community as well. She's a writing teacher, incredibly supportive of everybody else. Another one, fantastic one by a woman named Michelle Wright, who Melbourne writer, called Good Boy, and it's one about a low security prison in Gippsland and a prisoner who they have this dog adoption program, and he goes on the run with the dog, and it's just so beautifully written, and in that quintessentially Australian style as well, and she just nails the prisoner. She actually did a lot of work in Pentridge, sort of talking to old prisoners, and she's a tour guide in Pentridge now. She had a launch in H Division, which I'd never been into before, which was fantastic.
This is what we're saying earlier, isn't it? The authenticity of a writer like that. Yeah, absolutely.
And Melissa Manning is the last one I'll mention. Melissa Manning, another Australian writer, she's written this book called Frog Song, which is just beautiful, absolutely genius.
Contemporary Australian women writers, non-fiction, is your
male as well. Look, I'm a huge Tim Winton fan. I'll read anything that he puts out,
of course.
And probably one of my favourite writers at the moment is Robbie Arnott, fellow from Tasmania.
I nearly picked up one of his. I nearly took home one of his books. So
pick it up.
I'm glad. Yes, there's two that I nearly picked up.
It's written called Flames, The Rain Heron. and Limberlost.
Limberlost was the one I
is-
nearly picked
oh
up.
my-
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, you would Limberlost was it was like in Limberlost it was like he took my dad's story
Wow.
because my dad lived through the war years, but he was too young to go to war. But his brother went away, didn't come back,
Yeah.
and he used to trap rabbits to sell in Melbourne, sell the pelts in Melbourne for the Akubra hats, for the slash hats, and that's what this is. You know, I know Robbie, and when I saw him, I said, "Mate, this is my dad's story he told here because it's about this kid whose brother goes away, and he traps rabbits, and it's
Well,
brilliant."
I picked it up and I just.
No,
Anyway,
you
for
won't
whatever reason, I
regret
put it back down again. I didn't take a book home.
regret
I'm trying to use the library more often than my books at the moment. But yeah.
So that gives you a bit of an insight into.
No, that's interesting. It's very interesting. Yeah.
I want to explore this, the female writers, right? You mentioned that a lot of the audience or the market now are middle-aged women, and particularly when it comes to that crime or psychological thriller category that you mentioned. It strikes me, and I'm not just talking about books on bookshelves. I'm talking about because I've been entering some short story competitions, and I've been looking at online publications and so on, just looking at who gets published and who wins these flash fiction in particular, 300 words, 500 words. It strikes me in all these categories, women are really dominant now. Is that because, do you think that's because they're more creative? Do you think there's more opportunities open up for them in the last however many years? Do you
I think there are more opportunities that have opened up, and quite rightly, because it's one of the things with being like a middle-aged man writing into the Australian literary scene at the moment, and the pendulum has really swung in the last 10 to 15 years, and to embrace diversity and which I support 100%. And the writers that we're discovering through the swing in the pendulum, and that I'm talking about, ethnically diverse writers that haven't had a voice here in Australia, Indigenous writers who haven't had a voice before in Australia, queer writers that haven't had a voice in Australia before. All of these groups, and the writing. Oh my God, the writing is so good, and it's what it's doing is it's opening up a whole new world for the reader as well.
Is that because we as a society are more open to these ideas and exploring these people's stories, or do you think it's because the audience, like you said, has swung, or is it probably all connected? Is it?
And it's not. It's not one or the other. A combination of all of those things. I just think that there is a greater acceptance now of the diversity that's there on the bookshelves in your bookshop. Whereas in 20, 30 years ago, it was probably dominated by male writers. And I think it's great that it's moved. It's kind of hasn't taken away any of my audience, but I still write into what the spaces that I would normally write into. The other thing which finally has started to happen is that people who shouldn't be writing into certain spaces have stopped writing into those spaces because the voices are there
can't
now.
anymore.
The voices are there now to tell their own stories.
That's good.
And whether that's writing into Indigenous spaces or queer spaces or whatever it might be, and there are fantastic writers who have that lived experience who are now writing into that space. And that to me is that's one of the best things that's happened. And that's not happening just here in Australia, it's happening all over the world. And so when you look at the invitees to the major festivals here in Australia, they're coming from all over the world, and they're with an incredible range of ideas and stories, and that's what Writers' Festival should be. They should be as broad as that. So I don't get a gig at them, but I reckon that's probably fair enough. They've probably heard enough of white blokes. I still love going to festivals. And the other thing is, I think that and it should be judged on the writing as well. The writing has got to be good, but like I said, the writers into those spaces now are just extraordinary.
Okay. What made you choose young adult fiction as the category that you're going to start professionally writing into?
It came a lot from my teaching experience. So I spent the last 17 years of my teaching life running a residential campus, outdoor residential campus down at Santa Monica, down on the Great Ocean Road, sort of down near Lorne, for a big boys' school in Melbourne.
Oh, yeah, I
And,
see.
so students would come down for 4 weeks at a time. These were 15-year-old boys. 90% of them weren't reading, you know, and I got to kind of talking to them a lot about, well, what will get you reading? What's the sort of stories? And not surprisingly, you know, good characters and a fast plot and those sorts of things. But largely, I think they wanted to see themselves in the stories. They wanted to hear their own language. They wanted to see their own landscapes. And like I said, identify with the characters. So that's what brought me into that space. I thought I had stories that I could tell. I grew up in a big family, and that oral storytelling was really important in our family. Mostly it was just bullshitting. You know, who can out bullshit anybody else in the family? And that was 6 boys and 4 girls, and it was like, you know, and often it was creating alibis for each other about where we were at a particular time, and you know, when that window was broken, where was I supposed to be, and and also, you know, I'm a little bit older than I look. Like I grew up with listening to the radio serials, you know, Sherlock Holmes, and you know, my dad was into Hancock's Half Hour and that sort of stuff, and it was like, so those.
Any goons, mate? Any goons?
Goons were
A bit too young for goons, but I'm on the edge of some goon stuff too, which is bloody. Just so
mine was more towards Monty Python, because that was, you know, a little bit later. But I think that idea of, I've always considered that I've had stories to tell. It was just a matter of finding a medium for me to tell those stories, and it was like all those things came together at once. When I my publishing story is just so bizarrely off the charts. You know, it's every writer's dream that never ever happens, and it actually happened to me.
Okay, right place, right time.
Right place, right time, right manuscript, cashed up publisher, and every single domino fell into place. Wow. And at the time, I didn't know anyone in publishing. I had no connections whatsoever. I'd written a lot of short stories. I think it's a great place to start. And I'd ended up getting a lot published, so I had that on my side. But I still knew nobody. So that means that your manuscript, which they only want the first 3 chapters of, and they're going to judge you on, I reckon they'll only read the first one.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. Some will only read a page, figure out whether you can write or not. And it goes under what they call...
Get that first page right.
Yeah, that's right. Well,
first paragraph right.
There's a reason why the first chapter is the most rewritten chapter of any novel. Yeah. First chapter and the last.
To get it published,
To get it published,
that's why.
Because it's got to be absolutely...
because that's what you read when you pick up the book in the bookshop. That's
exactly
what I do.
Right. Yeah.
If it doesn't get me in the first paragraph, I put it back down again. You know? And often it's the cover that's got to get me in the first place to make me pick it up off the shelf.
And that's the designer's work. So the designer's got to do that. It's a whole team that brings that book together. So that, like, my book went on to what they call the slush pile, which is just unsolicited manuscripts, and publishers get hundreds of them sent to them, and they just sit on a pile in the publisher's office. And the particular company that I went to, Text Publishing, they had this policy which was every Friday afternoon you had to go, everyone in the company had to go and just grab a manuscript. Mine was picked up by one of the senior editors who was going home on the train on a Friday afternoon. She wanted something to read. Picked up mine, like, at random off the slush pile, read it, loved it, came back in the next Monday, started talking to the other people, passed it around, loved it. I got a phone call, you know, I call it the phone call that changed my life, saying, listen, come in and talk to us. Please don't talk to anybody else. Come in and talk to us. And so, and I went in, and it was like, at the time, we were pretty sure it was like a record offer for a young adult manuscript in Australia. It was that, you know, ridiculous. And it wasn't, you know, for a debut writer, if you just want that 1 book deal, this was a 3 book deal, which meant I didn't know if I had 2 more books in me. I had no idea. But I
wondered if you how did you know what even to expect? What was it like? Wouldn't you be happy just for them to have made contact with you and say, we like what you've written so far? I would have thought that would have been done. And I'd be happy just with that. Let alone then they actually want to. They want to print it. They want to publish it. They want to pay me money for it, and they wanted me to do some more. Must have been like, boy, that must have been a great phone call.
It was an incredible phone call, and there's so many things that have to be in the right place at the right time. So it was at Text Publishing. I don't know whether you know Graham Simpson, who wrote The Rosie Project.
Oh, yes. Yes. I don't know him, but I know
Text had just published that and it had gone really well.
Yes.
So they were looking for something in another space, and mine was there at the right time. It was bizarre. It was a bizarre time because it literally changed our lives. I couldn't. They sat me down at this big boardroom. They took me in, sat me down at this big boardroom. It's people all around the table, and they made the offer. And I thought, oh Jesus, I've misheard that. I can't believe And I just went along. I said, oh yeah.
You wouldn't know when.
No.
You would have no context. I'd imagine
no context
wouldn't
whatsoever.
know what to expect. I would.
And in the end, they slid this envelope across the table. Here, take it. Here's the offer. Now take this. And then I remember walking out into the centre of Melbourne. I walked up Burke Street, and I was just swearing my whole way up. I'm looking at this, and I'm looking, and then I rang my wife and said, "Hey, listen, are you sitting down?" Because and I told her, and she said, "On my way. I'm picking up the kids," and so we had a huge party up in Melbourne that night. Just blew it out of the water. It was great. But it literally. Yeah, it literally changed. But then I had to do the work too, you got to,
of course. But
and even they pay you money for it. You got to pay that money back. Through your sales. And like my young adult books sell for $20. Of that $20, I get $2.
Yeah.
And those $2 have got to add up to pay back the advance that they give you. Wow. So it might be 2, 3, 4, 5 years before you start to make any more money out of your book. Which is why I said at the beginning, it's very hard to make a living as a writer.
We've spoken that we mentioned before. We've had a publisher. We've spoken to publishers on our podcast, haven't we? And it's horrific when you think about how tough it is.
Publishing's the music industry too, isn't it? Yeah, it is only such a small number, and doesn't matter. Sometimes it doesn't matter how talented you are. Obviously, you need to be talented to succeed.
You've got to be.
But you could also be extremely talented and not succeed.
Or it could be just a matter of who comes along and sees you at that gig on that particular night and who they know. And
who picked up your manuscript off the slush pile.
That's
right. Your manuscript had to be good, otherwise you would not have...
And it's been the same in music. The music's still got to stand up. The writing's still got to stand up. But I absolutely guarantee that there would have been 10 other manuscripts on that pile that the writing would have been just as good as mine. But there's something about that.
Or somebody else, another person in that publishing company could have picked it up and not been as enamoured with it and not taken it back on Monday.
Exactly right. Or she had a bad day on the Friday. She was in a bad mood when she had home.
It's an incredible set of circumstances, isn't it, to have such a great result?
It was interesting because about after I'd signed and, the book we're editing it, and I had a chance to sit down with the head of the publishing house. And I said, listen, what can you tell me? What was it about, my book called Road to Winter? And he said, the thing that stood out, he said immediately to all of us who started reading it, she said, it was the voice. It was a voice that they hadn't heard before. And that was the thing. So once they had that, and that's one of the things you've got to establish immediately in that, at the beginning of the book, in that first chapter, is the voice. The voice of the character and the voice of you as a writer. And it's it's a very hard thing to explain, but it's like your fingerprint on the manuscript. It's like, I reckon, like if you're a big Tim Winton reader, I reckon you could be given a book, without knowing that it was by Tim Winton, and you'd be able to
it's Winton
because of his voice.
Carey, I think Carey. I'd say the same about Carey. You pick up anything written by Carey, and I think you'd go.
And you can quite often read something and know that they've been influenced by Tim Winton.
As well.
You can pick little bits up in it.
The voice,
And I don't mind that if you're being compared to Tim Winton. I'll take that.
Yeah, absolutely. So at that point, you were still teaching, and you were hopeful. You were hopeful that one day you'd get picked up, and
it wasn't even anything. I hadn't grown up dreaming about being a writer or anything like that. It just occurred to me that my kids were starting to get older. I had a bit more free time. At the residential campus, there's a lot of night work, so kids would go to bed at 9 o'clock. I had 2-3 hours, each night. So I started using that for writing time, and I began by writing short stories and entering them in competitions, sending them out to journals, newspapers, magazines, see what I could get picked up.
And was that Did you always have in the mind that you'd like to be a professional writer, or did you kind of just think, I just need to write? I've got this drive to write. Or
I didn't really have it. I didn't think I had a drive to write. I thought there's a difference. I consider myself. This might sound a bit strange, but I consider myself a better storyteller than a writer.
Right. Okay.
I think my stories are what carry my writing rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
So I'm driven by the story, and my actual writing skills are getting better in terms of telling that story. But I think that comes from that oral storytelling tradition
from your family as well,
from
the family influence,
and being confident that I could tell a story, but just needing the words to be able to do it in print. I was never actually particularly. I had never ever thought that I could write a novel, even when I was writing short stories. That's just too hard.
Yeah.
How can you do that? I don't understand.
You go from a 300-word flash fiction to I submitted one that was up to a maximum of 5,000. I did about 2,500, and I'm like, shit. Yeah. You know, if you're talking about 60 to 80,000 for a novel, oh my God, this would just suck you, suck so much life out of you, wouldn't it?
So, I mean, I wrote that first book. I gave myself 12 months. So I stopped writing short stories and I gave myself 12 months. And that was writing every bit of spare time that I got.
Yeah. This is this first manuscript, which was successful, that you're talking about.
And I ended up with a 90,000 word manuscript, right? 90,000 words. Yeah. The book was published at 58,000 words.
Yeah, wow.
So it gives you a good indicator of what you need to be prepared to let go of to get your story published. And I mean, they were right. That book has sold, I don't know, 70,000 copies. It's if you sell 10,000 copies in Australia, that's a bestseller.
Oh, really?
So that's a 7 times bestseller, principally by being on curriculum.
It's in curriculum.
So it sort of turns over year after year after year.
What year is it being read by?
8. Well, it's the only book in Victoria that's taught across 5 year levels. So 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And I even came across a school in Perth recently that teaches at year 12.
Right through. Oh, so it's being taught at every secondary level.
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's a fantastic.
That must be incredibly satisfying to know. Not only that you're ticking over sales, obviously that's nice, but that you're actually influencing young people, you know.
And at every age through every level of education through to secondary. That's amazing.
Playing an important role in their literacy and their ability to read.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing that really is the biggest reward.
Of course.
And literally every single time I go to a school, there'll be something that will happen that will be, often it'll be a boy that'll come up and he'll say, this is the first book I've ever read and I loved it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well,
great.
I need no more.
My day's done.
Yeah, my day's done.
Absolutely.
Last week I was at a school and they taught the book at year 8. And, you know, kids come up afterwards, they had their book signed and things. That was great. And these 3 girls were sort of sitting back, you know, and then they came up and said, we made you this. And it was an illustrated Road to Winter. Wow. It was 10, 12 pages long.
Wow.
And they had done every scene and drawings.
Drawn it and coloured it.
Yeah. It was like...
Wow, what a gift.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So they're the little kind of engagements that make it all worthwhile.
Yeah.
And I mean, those gigs don't always go well. You know, they can be really rowdy, and they're just not into it, and that's fine. But but coming from a teaching background, and particularly year 9s, you know, some writers won't go and do year 9 classes. I love them. Just put me in there. You know, I'll win them over one way or another.
You're a storyteller, so you can, that's easy.
And that's exactly right, because you know, 60% of my presentations to them are just telling stories. They love stories.
Yeah, of course.
Tell me a story.
Of course. Yeah.
And I can give them the horse riding story in great detail. And then I actually broke my neck a second time playing footy. Like about 8 months later.
Okay.
Same C3. Yeah.
Oh my God.
So then I tell them that story, and you know, and then I start to demonstrate the way in which these things end up in the books. And that horse that's mentioned in the book, well, that was my horse. That's the one I fell off. You know, and then you know, and so all of these things it's like piecing together a jigsaw puzzle with them. And they love stories from what they call the olden days. You know,
you poor old thing.
When I say, you know, I was recuperating and we had no internet, what do you mean?
Completely different universe.
Yeah.
So, did you? So you grew up on the surf coast, did you, Mark?
No, I grew up in Bayside, Melbourne,
Yeah.
but Mentone, and which gave me, because surfing has been one of the passions of my life. I've surfed my entire life, really, about 50 years more. And
When you haven't had a broken neck.
yeah, when I've had a broken. Well, that was funny because I convinced my parents at that time, like they said, you can never play footy again. You're never allowed to go. I loved playing footy, but that was taken away from me because you could the risk of a spinal injury again.
Absolutely. I think
second
your parents
time.
were right.
Yeah, oh, they were.
My
100%.
parent wouldn't say the same thing. Yeah.
Especially in an impact sport like
No,
footy.
and then but I convinced them, well, what about surfing? Surfing, what they didn't realise was surfing has a higher rate of spinal injury. Yeah. But they thought, water, what can go wrong? Water's soft.
Just like swimming.
Yeah. So, I grew up in Bayside, but that gave me access to the whole East Coast.
Yeah.
Mornington Peninsula, all the breaks down there, Phillip Island, I surfed there a lot.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until the end of the 1970s that I moved to Point Lonsdale and started, and I hadn't left this coast since.
Yeah.
Raised our kids in Anglesey, little coastal town.
Yeah.
Everyone knows everyone.
Yeah.
They never got away with anything.
Yeah.
Well, not that we thought.
Mad in summer though these days, Anglesey.
Yeah, it is.
The whole coast is now.
Yeah, the whole coast is.
Yeah.
But when you've been there for a while, I'll put up with 6 weeks of that. It's really only about 4 weeks.
Yeah.
From Boxing Day on, even by towards the end of January, it's starting to peter out. But I understand why they want to come down, and they keep businesses alive in town. Of
course.
Keep young kids. All of my kids worked in hospitality.
Yeah.
They worked in every restaurant and chicken shop and
Yeah.
and cafe along the coast. So, like everybody else, I'd prefer it if we had it to ourselves, but we've got it to ourselves for the rest of the year. So.
Yeah, that's right. And it is the price you pay for living in such a beautiful part of the world. And I was having a conversation with a lady a few weeks back. I went down to Kennett River for a few days just to get away. And she was from the Morning Peninsula, and we were talking about, this time, that time of year, and how crazy it's become and how busy it's become over the years. And she said, well, what we love about it is that we now have all this choice of restaurants and pubs and all this thing. They wouldn't be there if the crowds didn't come in summer because they wouldn't survive with normal.
Yeah.
And it is a bit different here in Torquay now because we are so close to Armstrong Creek. We're a date, Anglesey's that big further away.
Yeah.
So we've become quite a big town, but it gives us all that choice. It means we don't have to drive to Walpuns to go to Bunnings. It doesn't mean, all that kind of thing, which.
And those businesses also need our support through winter. Like we make sure, we probably eat out more in winter because we want to make sure that the places stay open. And we've got some fantastic places in Anglesey now. And they can only keep going because the locals support them through that, through that colder period.
Yeah,
Have we been down there to eat? Or where do we go? Aries Inlet. Where's your group, mate? That's Aries.
That's Aries.
Aries.
Allegrek.
We love Allegrek. We get down there.
We went there on Sunday, actually, and just called him the last day before they closed before winter.
He's gone back.
Back to Greece.
Back to Greece. We actually went to. Well, I hope he's not listening to this. We'll count up to tell his Jardos, But we're going to go to because we thought we had till the end of June to go to Allegrek, and I'm sure he said that it wasn't closing until the end of June anyway. So we thought, we'll go down. We want to check out the bookshop. We'd heard good things about it, and we're going to go to Le Comptoir and have a French onion soup, which is pretty magnificent. And Aries was heaving on Sunday. Like I don't know, there must have been some festival or something. The place was heaving. So we couldn't get into there, and we said, Stratus will squeeze us in. We're right on 12 o'clock. It's like there's only two of us. We'll have a quick feed and a couple of glasses of wine. But we love it down there. So. So what's on the horizon then? I've got this new book that I'm writing at the moment, so I'm going to take a little bit longer with this one. Yep. I just feel as though I need to ease back a little bit. Yep.
Another adult fiction novel.
Yeah.
Similar genre.
Yeah, similar genre. But I'm sort of when I write, I can get 20, 30,000 words in and I still don't know where it's going. So I operate on this theory that it will reveal itself to me as we go along.
I love that idea because I hear that quite often from writers. And because, when, I've had this idea that I might write a novel one day for a long, long, long time. And, I always thought you must have to have everything planned out. You know, you must have a whole timeline, have all these characters, all that. And then I hear all these writers say that they'll just start writing and see what comes out.
Yeah, it's called pantsing. So you're flying by the seat of your pants. And,
you're pantsing.
I enjoy.
You must have a starting point. You've obviously got
a starting point. But even that will swap and change because. You know, the beginning of your story, when you write that first draft, you might find a scene from here that's going to work better back here, that'll really draw your reader in. You know, the way that we see it on movies and series all the time. Yeah. The first scene is actually from the climax. And then 2 weeks earlier or a month earlier, and then they build up to the climax again and then move it from there. So
it's an
any
old
number
trick
of ways.
now in film, isn't it? You see that regularly in film.
You do.
Anything made, visually made, that's often a strategy.
So
or a
there's
technique.
that, you know, getting that one done, and I'll try and fit in some travel sometime, you know, each year. And so looking at, we're cyclists, we're sort of touring cyclists, so we've been cycling in Japan a bit. We're going to looking at a different area of Japan to cycle in. We love to, wife and I love to travel, but do it. Cycling's just such a great way to so a few 2 or 3 years ago, we rode from Barcelona to Amsterdam.
Oh yeah,
and you know, we've done that one. We've been around Ireland. We've ridden in Laos, Cambodia, Thailand. Great Britain.
Do you take your bikes with you, or do you? How does that work when you travel overseas?
Sometimes we will. We have done that.
You can do
Otherwise,
that,
we've lined up. You know, like we actually found a shop in Barcelona online before we left. Ordered the bikes in so that they were there at that shop. So we could pick them up and head out from there. And then we brought those ones home with us. But it's a little bit different in Asia, because traveling in Asia with bikes, because a lot of them won't allow you to have bikes on trains. So, you know, when you finish your ride or you want to get back to the airport or whatever, it can be a real encumbrance having a bike.
Is it just too many people getting on the train?
I guess so. So we're looking at riding in South Korea. They've got fantastic cycling infrastructure in South Korea, right down the peninsula. But they don't have the, you know, sometimes we'll just hire a bike for the time that we're there. We toy between the old e-bike or the oldest, you know, depending on what the terrain's like. When we rode in Japan, we rode in the mountains, so we used the e-bikes.
And is it just you and your wife, or do you go in larger groups?
No, just my wife and I. Generally, we just do self-guided stuff, you know. So there'll be ones where, you know, like in Japan, where they'll just give you the GPS on your bike and just follow the route, and so you're independent. I love that. When we did the big ride in Europe, we just we're following a designated trail which you could download. And we just get to lunchtime and then look ahead and think, where are we going to get to? Well, we'll book a hotel there, and it generally worked out.
How much of that journey from Barcelona to Amsterdam was on bike-only roads compared to traffic roads?
Yeah, a lot of it was it crossed between. So I'd say about 2/3 of it was on dedicated cycle paths, but they were generally tow paths along canals. So they followed a lot of the canals. They followed rivers, right up the Rhone River, and in France, you could have. It's funny because it's like their local councils. They're in charge of the cycling infrastructure, so you can have this fantastic bicycle path for like 20 k's, and then it just dies in the house because you move into the next, and they don't care about bikes at all. So, but you know, we did some big climbs and up over the Ardèche and over the Pyrenees. So it's just having that challenge. Love that. And it kind of gives and you meet so many more people when you're just riding a bike than traveling on a train or in a car.
So, Mark, you're incredibly busy as a professional writer, with all of the things that go with it, apart from doing your own writing, all the other things we've already discussed. But you're clearly very active. You're surfing and you're bike riding as well. You look very fit. Do you have a specific fitness regime, diet regime, to keep you in such great healthy shape?
I don't know whether I call it a regime, but I've always been really cautious about my health.
Yeah.
And when you reach a certain age, you've got no choice but to be.
It gets harder.
Yeah, it gets
It does harder as you get older, for sure.
The best thing we have a dog, and we have a dog called a Vizsla, Hungarian Vizsla, and she has to have at least 4 or 5 Ks walk a day.
Yeah.
That gets me up 4 or 5 Ks every day.
Yeah, yeah.
So if that's at the beach and we
That's a
swim,
good
they
start.
put in a swim as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Surfing, when it's on, I'm surfing less and less now because, got other commitments, but I try to do that. I try to get on the bike as much as I can, and yoga.
Yeah.
Yoga has been a
Yoga?
big part of my life for the last 20 odd years.
Yeah, okay.
So Surf Coast Yoga out on Adderscott Road.
I've just started yoga, actually.
Right.
Yeah, my wife's been doing it for years, man. My daughter's mad for it. She's actually a yoga instructor now, but I've just started doing yin yoga as a nice way for me to get to find a way to yoga.
Yeah. And it's just that, one of the things, as we get older, we lose our flexibility, but it's also strength building.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of both. My flexibility is shocking, but it would be a lot worse if I didn't do yoga.
Yeah.
Do you think the little bit of yoga that I've had a crack at on and off again over many years, the chicks just left me behind so badly? Like I found it really hard. Most of the classes I've ever been to, almost majority were women, and a couple of blokes, and the blokes had no chance of getting into the position.
Yeah.
The women seem to be more flexible. I mean, they're talking
This
20 years ago, maybe.
yoga for starters, because you're holding position. So you go into a position and then you hold it for 5, 6, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it is. So, but the instructors that I've had in the short time I've been doing it, they're all very clear. You do it where you're comfortable. You don't. You don't have to do it this particular way. If you're uncomfortable, then you adjust the pose to your comfort.
But that's okay for the instructors to say. Have you had a look at them? What they can do to themselves?
That's the point.
One of the really interesting things is, and I know this from my climbing days, from rock climbing, is that women tend to have a much better strength to weight ratio. As opposed to men. And a lot of the guys that come to the yoga that I go to, we're surfers. So good upper body strength, but not great great lower body strength or backs in particular. Because there won't be very many surfers that reach my age that haven't had their rotator cuffs done, just through wear and tear, who don't have lower back problems because of that terrible position that you paddle in.
On your board.
On your board. That arching of the back while you paddle. So yoga, can really help with that and boost your core strength in particular, so that it supports that back in a better way. It's honestly been it's been really, really important to me. And I've had some ongoing issues from spinal injury that have been really helped by yoga. And I'm not a yogi or anything, but I do it. I do my own practice, and 2 or 3 times a week, and I go to 1 class a week. So just enough to keep me rolling over, But it's hard because it's on Thursday night, and the footy's on Thursday night.
That is now. It's also on
Thursday night football. You just I half the time I miss it. Like shit, that was a game on yesterday. That's right, it was Thursday.
It's creating a problem of Thursday night football in our household. So I like my footy. And my wife and I are sort of trying to moderate our alcohol intake, amongst other things. So we've got a rule now: we won't drink during the week. Let's go and enjoy a bottle of wine with dinner on the weekend, or we'll just have
we do
have a drink on weekends, right? So that used to be Friday night when the footy came. Guys going, Brian, it's Thursday, it's not Friday. I said, but the footy's on. And guess what? There was footy on Monday as well. So I've been almost a binger. And I had grandchildren and children down for a long weekend as well. So we had some very nice
I'll support, and they seem to be playing a lot of Thursday games. So it just annoys me. I'm not ready to watch the footy on a Thursday night. It's just too early in the morning.
I don't mind. I think I'm going to sound like Ken Davis here, but one of the worst things they did was to take free-to-air footy off on Saturdays. What a disastrous decision. I know they try and compensate by saying, we've got the Thursday night games, but that's Thursday night.
I know.
Saturday night was a traditional night when you watch footy.
A traditional family night for watching footy too, I reckon.
I agree.
I reckon that was a really, really, I thought there's supposed to be laws in place to keep free-to-air.
I'd forgotten all about that, and I think it was Hawthorn Bulldogs, obviously not the one just gone, but a few weeks back, and I'd set my mind, it was just like, I'm going to sit and watch the footy. I don't watch a lot of footy, and I'm pretty one-eyed, so I generally only watch Hawks games, but I I just had, right, I want to sit down. I went and turned it on. Everything, ready, a couple of beers, just ready to go. No footy on. I'm like, what's going on? Some like porn stars or some other stupid Channel 7 show on. I'm like, what the hell? Oh, shit, Saturday night. So I actually had to get KO for one month just to watch the game. I'm like, that's enough.
I think also that how often did you sort of go out for a dinner on a Saturday night and then you come over, we can watch the second half of the footy when we get home. You're home at 9:30 and,
right.
oh, hang on.
Early dinner and
not on.
So who do you follow?
I'm a Swannies.
Oh, yeah.
Old South Melbourne.
South Melbourne.
Yeah.
Okay.
My grandfather was South Melbourne. Yeah.
Dad was a South Melbourne supporter,
Okay.
and he used to take us along to the Lakeside Oval. And I saw Bobby Skilton play when I was a kid. Those old tough days when you'd be out on the terrace, and it was a pretty rough old place, but I loved it.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it. And when they moved to Sydney, I reckon if they had to change the colours, I would have, might have thought twice, but no, you can't. I couldn't.
Yeah, it's the colours, isn't it?
It is.
I think that's sort of what's sometimes hard about following a local footy club too. Do you follow Anglesey at all?
So my boys played for Anglesey.
You're following North Melbourne colours, or like I've never taken the Tigers locally because they're Richmond colours. Like I've started following the Surf Coast Suns, and it's like, all right, so the colours are pretty garish, and red and yellow. I'm not a huge fan, but. At least it's not Richmond or North Melbourne. Or following a club that's got Collingwood colours.
Another recognisable brand. Collingwood. That could be worse, couldn't it?
Yeah. And I'm used to following poos and wees anyway, so
you can't be too fussy about colours. Following Hawthorn. Well, that the Ken Davis comment you're talking about before and about the AFL and and the changes to footy. My great old mate Hinksy, who unfortunately is no longer with us, but a great old friend of mine, he said that they ruined footy when they stopped playing all the games on a Saturday afternoon, and they don't do around the grounds anymore. They're around the grounds, and he gave up then watching it. So
you go to the game and on the scoreboard that had the numbers of you'd have to look up the record.
Get the record and find out which goes which to get the scores.
I'll just tell you one story because this is the story of my childhood. So when I had broken my neck and I was in the neck brace, and I wasn't supposed to exercise at all. I wasn't supposed to do anything, but I got a lift to Bob Skilton's last game at the Lakeside Oval. So it must have been 1971. I was pretty young. And you weren't, I wasn't supposed to do anything. But in those days, the way there was no big banner or anything to run through. They just had bunting across the mouth of the race, So Bobby Skilton runs on. And in those days, everyone, because it was his last game, everyone jumps the fence and runs a lap with him. So I couldn't resist. So I jumped the fence and I hadn't been able to run for ages, and they went up to the other end and they came back through the middle. And by the time they got back to the middle, I was running next to, like Bob Skilton was my idol. I was running next to him, this kid in a neck brace.
With a neck brace
on. So anyway, then we, would go home and on the way home, the Herald used to have an early edition and a late edition. And the early edition would just have, the scores at quarter time on a Saturday afternoon. But because it was Bobby's last game, splashed across the front page of the Herald is, all these kids running with Bob Skilton. And here's this kid with a neck brace. And so, but the problem was my mum didn't know I was there. And my mum didn't know that she would have absolutely skinned me alive had she known I was running
on the ground.
So we had to hide the paper from her. So she didn't get to see it. Dad,
of course, Dad had. But he couldn't show
He helped me over the fence. So it was,
that's fantastic.
What a different time, though. I love that story because running on the ground with the players, like that obviously you never even heard of. Not even, I don't know, can they even do it if they kick 100 goals these days?
Buddy.
I remember those a few years ago now, but I don't know how that goes. Probably nobody will ever kick 100 goals in it anyway, so it's probably not even a question they need to ask.
Unplugger, Buddy and Plugger, they ran on, didn't they? Those games.
Well, remember Buddy, they had to stop the game. Was delayed for about 45 minutes because they couldn't clear the ground. It was against Geelong.
Once they got on, they wouldn't get...
No, and the players had to exit, like they were out on the street trying to get back around to get to the club rooms. And then they went back on for, it was about 20 minutes or something they had to play. And they didn't finish till like 11:30 or something on that night.
But the other part of that story I love is the two editions of the newspaper. Like they can barely get one out these days, and to have like the quarter time scores in the first edition or whatever. So they've like literally like they're writing, printing it and running it straight.
So there'd be a bloke on the phone, it would have been a pay phone, and he would be screaming down the line.
Crazy. Just how different the times.
Just a different way information now flows.
Past,
Now, who would want to read a quarter time score or another quarter time score now at 6 o'clock at night? We all know it anyway.
So everyone's counting down, those last few seconds because they know on the phone and people are chanting, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So
changes the whole thing.
Completely different.
Yeah, like I said, I was trying to watch a bit more local footy and just really enjoying the vibe of that. And it's just something, I don't know, something really special about local footy, I think.
There is, and you really see it. I mean, Anglesey won its first premiership in 20-odd years. And just the lift of the place, suddenly everybody's on board, and that was fantastic. To see that.
That was quite a win, wasn't it? Because they were lucky to make the five.
They were. They just scraped in. And then they just powered their way through. Even 3/4 time in the grand final, you wouldn't have had money on them, but they stormed home and did well.
Yeah, well, the Suns obviously, it's a tough entry into them, but to have a win with their second game was incredible for the club. But even on Saturday, I went out there. Great day to watch local footy, and they apart from 2 bursts where Ocean Grove kicked 5 goals in each burst. They would have won that quite almost comfortably. They dominated a lot of the game, but the just the buzz around the ground. They're running out at 3/4 time. And, this week a famous win. Come on, boys. They didn't quite get there. Unfortunately, they lost by 10 points. But
I think the thing with local footy too is you still get the chance to go out on the ground and listen into the coach talking to them. And
the Suns coach is very quiet. I wish he'd speak up a bit because I want to hear what he's got to say. But
they still do that. I was over in WA recently. I went to a waffle game at the old Freo Oval. South Freo. And everyone goes out onto the ground at quarter time and they're listening to the coach and kids footy's going everywhere, and then they clear it, and then they come back again at half time. I love that. That reminds me of what it used to be like.
See those little kids running around out there kicking footies, little boys and girls. They're hardly any bigger than the footy, and they're all dressed up in the colours. And
netball's so strong. The women's sport is so strong. It goes with it in country towns, and we often talk here about the importance of those clubs, that club atmosphere for young kids to grow up. It's a safe environment for people to volunteer. All the locals go in. It's such an important part of
There's a lot of work's got to go into making that a safe environment. That's the thing. And when my boys were playing for Anglesey, I was kind of took on that mental health role that was part of the AFL that they were sponsoring us to, so there was kind of a mental health person in there. I forget what the name of the program was, but that was a really good indicator of the way in which those clubs are taking on board those kind of societal demands as well. And I mean, we've seen recently with horrible things happening at Footy Club down in the Western District there with where hasn't got through everywhere yet. So there should be safe places. And if a club does it well, it works really well.
And they are so important to small country towns. Those sporting clubs. It's healthy, but the kids are outside, they're off their screens, out, physical activity.
And as teenagers, they're volunteering, they're either running the raffle, or they're working, selling sausages or whatever they're doing,
It was interesting because we're pretty new to town in Anglesey, years ago, and we hadn't had that connection with the footy club. But then when my oldest son started playing, started connecting, and then there's a whole other part of the community there that we weren't aware of. I'd sort of seen these people around town, but they had no idea who they were. And suddenly you're welcomed into this fold.
Footy club.
And my wife and I were always of the same. Look, the kids are playing. We've got to help out in some way. So I'd be the runner or the trainer or anything just to be there and to share it with them. It's a great part of those young boys and girls growing up to have that engagement with their parents there.
It is.
I could never understand the parents that sort of dropped their kids at the gate and said, we'll pick you up.
Well, if ever you would have coached, if ever you've coached junior sport, and I've done plenty of it. It's unbelievable, and the expectation the parents have of you as a coach and the absolute absence of time and effort they put in to their own children or around the club. It's just, it's hard to believe. Like, it's amazing. You think, really, drop them off and pick them up.
Child minding service.
I find it hard to believe. Most parents, like you say, you want to get involved and be engaged and you want to be part of it. You don't see it as something other, to somewhere to put your kid.
I also think too that those conversations that you have with your sons in particular, because my wife went with my daughter who was at netball and I was generally with the boys that were playing footy. Those conversations that you have coming home from a game, because you're driving, you don't have the eye contact.
Yeah.
And some of the best conversations I've had with my sons were in that situation.
Yeah, interesting.
And not just about the game, but about other players and how they're feeling about stuff. And those car conversations are really important.
It's funny. It's a little bit like that Mary O'Brien conversation, isn't it? Women talk face to face and men talk shoulder to shoulder.
Correct.
Correct. It's a bit like what Mark's saying. Back to back. Like looking at the back of your head and talking without looking at each other. Yes.
Or standing at the footy.
Yeah. Standing there just at the bar or whatever it's like. Don't look, just say it.
So you're watching the game of footy, but you're talking to your mate next to you.
Well, I'll go on, Mark.
I don't know whether you read the book by Helen Garner called The Seasoned.
I haven't, but I'm aware of it.
It is an absolute cracker. It's basically her and her grandson. So her grandson's playing footy for, it's one of the, junior Footscray teams, so West Footscray or something, but they play at JJ Holland Park, which is right down in Kensington. And she follows the whole season with him. And she's just an observer and she's listening in to all of these male conversations. Then she gets the other, there's the mums there as well. It's like a reflection of society in this team. And it's an absolute cracking piece of work. And the relationship that she develops with her grandson, just by going along. She doesn't intrude. She doesn't, she doesn't throw herself in or anything. She says, one job once, and that was I was allowed to carry the oranges all the time. To be an observer in that place, and she went to those horrible training sessions on a rainy Thursday night, and she was there and just seeing the way they cope with it.
Have you ever had any read articles on the Footy Almanac? Have you had anything to do with the Footy Almanac?
No.
It's a great little resource for people who are just passionate about footy. Amateur writers, some really good, some not so good, but they're all got in common. And it's not just footy. They have poetry on there, they talk about music. I'll put articles on there that are about travel or whatever. Often I'll try and relate it to footy or sport, but I think I put an article up there when Ozzy Osbourne died, from Black Sabbath and stuff like that. So it's very broad and it's very community based. And there are some writers on there who are really, really good. There's a local writer who does children's books down the Otways, and he writes some fantastic stuff, and particularly about local footy because he's still playing and he's in his 50s and he's still playing down at Otway districts or whatever. And just that whole spirit of a club like Otway Districts, which is a club that's struggling. It's an amalgamation of a whole bunch of clubs that have gone under from different leagues and stuff. Just the passion of that. It's great. I love that. I love a sport writing that is in that vein. I love great cricket. I love reading great cricket writing. Gideon Hay, these sorts of guys. Or I love. What's the guy from Tasmania that's retired now?
Flanagan. Flanagan's right playing football.
About football. Fantastic. Those two passions coming together.
I don't know whether you read Bob Murphy's book, Leather Soul.
No, I haven't. No.
In terms of he had a column in the Age for quite a while.
He did,
and he always had that kind of. He always off on the edges somewhere and relating it to music and whatever. But Leather Soul, it's a ripper read. It's inside that club as well. And him going there as a young skinny kid, and how he. Some of the situations that he saw as being real watershed moments for him becoming a man, and how he, and he just has a different perspective. He's not a football writer. He's writing from inside the tent. He's not observing from the outside.
Because he was a little bit different, was he?
He's an ASOS man, Bobby, and he's great on the radio in the mornings now, and he's. I don't know if you probably do know, Mark, but I think his parents are both Catholic, clergy. His dad was a priest or going to be, and his mum was a nun or going to be, and they came together and got married and had the kids
up in Druin or
Warragul, I think. It's very interesting that that'd be a great subject if you had a mind, had the time, you're interested in writing up. I've met a lot of very interesting men, great sportsmen, and sort of statesmen almost, that have been through that Catholic seminary experience and then and not gone on to become ordained, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in small rural communities, they're some of the most articulate and free-thinking and really creative, important, spiritual sort of...
John Harmer, who founded Footy Almanac, his father was a Lutheran preacher.
Oh,
right.
yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
So he grew up in that
That's
kind of
interesting, that
environment too.
That connection.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
And he has good writing about the, footy. I remember
John Harms.
John Harms.
John Harms.
Yes. Traveling from Queensland down to South Australia and then across to WA to follow an Ashes series,
right?
And just the landscape changing from rugby posts to Aussie rule posts. As you sort of cross into the south a bit more.
And my mate, a great old friend of mine who was a local historian in Bendigo, a guy by the name of Ray Wallace, who's a really interesting sort of what would you call him? I don't know, natural environmentalist, but he was a historian, local historian, published. But he was a football umpire and a wicket-keeper at cricket and a Tigers fan. He was really interesting, incredibly well-read, and had a library of 10,000 books in his house. His house was stacked up with books, mostly Australian natural history.
Yeah.
Magnificent private library, best one I've ever seen. Anyway, he used to say, he said, every winter's afternoon, all across Victoria, at 2:00 in the afternoon, the siren goes off. All over regional Victoria. It just goes all over, on a still winter's day. It's going off Casted and Coleraine, off it goes or whatever,
And
it's a great...
And the reserves, they get on the piss and start digging the opposition, all the back of the ears, sitting on the back of the ears, they're on the cans and they're abusing the opposition seniors. And
every little town and dogfight, off it goes. I don't know how many would go off, hundreds every Saturday afternoon, that sound all over the country towns. Fantastic. Great image. I've never forgotten what he said.
Most of which, if not all of which, wouldn't operate without volunteers.
No,
as
correct.
well.
People
drawn to it to support it.
Yeah, love it. Cool. Well, thanks heaps for coming in. I mean, I could pick your brains for hours about the writing process and so on, but I'm really glad that you've come in. I do want to touch on one thing. Do you have a particular process? Do you have a room you have to go to? You separate yourself from the house, to lock yourself out from distractions?
When I'm in writing mode, so like I'm promotion mode at the moment, so I'm out and about the whole time. But when I'm in writing mode, it's basically getting up at 6:30 in the morning. I go down to the study, close the door, and I write for 3 hours.
Yep.
And then the rest of the day is my own. I can't write for longer than about 3 hours at a time. That gets me between 1,000 and 1,500 words.
Yep.
So, a novel, adult novel is probably 80,000 words, 85,000 words. So you just got to build those, build.
Yeah.
You don't always feel like writing when you go down there, but that's the discipline of it, that you've still got to find the words, even when you don't feel like it.
And you find the morning's a nice quiet time, is that way?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't even have breakfast. I get up, I just make myself a cup of tea, take the pot down with me, and I write that is the fastest 3 hours of my day. It just disappears.
And the most productive.
And I always know that my reward is the rest of the day. I can, and during the rest of the day, I do that writing away from the desk. So I figure out, where am I going to go next? And by the time I come back the next morning at 6:30, I'm on it. I know where I've got to go. The interesting thing that I've discovered recently is that it's taken me 6 books to get there. Is that some days you go down there and the words just flow, and I just think this is awesome. Other days you go down there and that you really struggle. You still get the words out, but But when you go back and look at the manuscript at the end, you cannot tell the difference between the days when
you can't see it.
When it was flowing and when you thought you were struggling. So in other words, that tells me that the writing is the same. It's just the way you're thinking about it on that particular day that changes. And
when do you walk the visual? Before or after the writing session?
After,
as soon as you finish.
And little things that I've learnt as well, like smart things, like I will, when I finish writing in the morning, I will always finish in the middle of a scene. that I'm writing, so
yes.
that when I come back,
yes.
I know where this has got to go.
That's
and
interesting.
I'm 200 or 300 words in.
That's interesting,
And I've got
yeah.
my momentum.
So you're
up.
not worried you lose that?
No,
Okay.
no.
That's
And
way better than coming in. I'm just thinking, that's a good tip, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you've almost got you've started when
That's
you sit
right.
down. It's rolling.
I know where I
and
am.
you're not saying, where am I going to
finish
start?
this off?
You pick that thread and
yeah,
you got
yeah,
that.
okay. That's a good
I mean,
tip.
and I also have this mantra, this is probably the difference between that I learnt from how do I go from writing a short story to a novel. And it was just this mantra is what would logically happen next? What would logically happen next? And that takes me from scene to scene to scene to scene.
So almost like putting together a whole bunch of short stories, but they've just got the same characters and the same
themes running through them.
And
Theme.
looking for that connection. What's the connection to the next? That's that joining piece.
Yeah.
The next. What's going to happen next? Yeah.
And how can I surprise my reader?
Yeah.
And yourself maybe.
And myself.
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah, very interesting.
Well, we have a little question. I'm meant to warn our guests because it's brand new, and I forgot to do it last time.
Okay.
We haven't actually
with Dags.
We haven't actually consulted on this. We haven't actually called.
I told you 2 episodes ago while I was asking the guests.
While you were asking, okay, but we haven't actually gone back to decide whether I think it's a good idea or not. I think this is a stupid idea, but we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, go for it.
No, I don't. I don't. I just said that because it's Scott's idea.
But I was going to warn you, and I'm meant to warn the guests, so I forgot. Public holiday put me off here, so let's go with that. So if you could go back in time and say one thing to your 14-year-old self, what would you tell him?
Hang on to that bloody horse.
Yeah.
No, it would
But
be.
then you wouldn't be a writer.
No, I think I would. I used to do this very activity.
Yeah.
We used to run parents and father and son nights down at the campus that I worked at. And a number of I've heard this answer and an incredible variety of answers. One that sticks with me was one bloke said, "Look after your teeth." but for me, looking back to my 14-year-old self, I would say I felt I was a kid that really lacked confidence.
Yeah.
And for no reason. I had a beautiful, supportive, loving family. It was a pretty rough school that I went to, and there's a lot of fights and bullying and stuff went on there, which, taught me how to run. But it would be just to slow down and enjoy it a little bit more. And I used to say this to the boys I work with as well, you're in such a hurry to get older. Why? Just slow down and take in what you can and learn what you can. And, your parents are often right. They might not seem like it at the time, but they're often right. Yeah. So
you can, in hindsight, once you become a parent, you can see all of that.
Yeah. And look, I'm in the same situation. I'm a grandparent now, and I will give them everything. I will never say no to, you want to play? I will never say no to that question because I know that they're going to grow up as fast as my kids did and they're going to be gone from that age. So,
as fathers, we all know that. Look at your daughter now. She's off on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
She's only 21 or something, but she's gone. She is absolutely out there as a free adult in the world.
Yeah. And we'll never get that.
That's gone.
I mean, she'll always be our daughter. She'll always, we'll always be close to her in some way, but not in the same way as when they were.
I think one of the greatest things that we have done as parents has been to travel with our adult children. We've done 2 or 3 trips to Japan and to the States and Canada.
Done that.
We did that when she was young, and now she's just won't stop. She's probably going to do it for the rest of her life, but she's now starting a business traveling, essentially, because that's what she loves and that's what she wants to do for the rest of her life. So.
They find their passion.
They do, and reading to them when they're young too. Yeah. I read to Trinity pretty much every day of her life when she was young, and sung to her even though I can't sing, and then she became a great writer, like songwriter and musician. Yeah. So, those things I think parents don't realise at the time how important they are and how much they stick.
And it's an investment. It's an investment in your, relationship with them as much as anything. It's like that thing of going along and volunteering at the footy if your kids are playing. You just engage with him on that level, and you won't get that time back.
No, you won't.
Can't buy it back. So invest in it while it's there.
And you just can't realise at the time just how important it is to that kid as they get older. To have that confidence and so that you're engaged and interested in what they're doing.
Well, I read regularly to my 3 boys. I was one of 7 children. You mentioned earlier, one of 10, Mark, and I was one of 7 children. My dad used to tell me stories in bed. He never we didn't have books.
No,
you know?
we didn't.
We didn't have books in the house. But I'd get into bed. Before I'd go to bed, I'd go to bed with my mum and dad. And I'm in the middle of 7 children now. 7 years up to my elder and 7 years down to my younger one. So 3 up there, 3 down there, and me in the middle, a bit like you, almost as an only child, right? And so I'd get to bed with my mum and dad before I'd go to bed, and Dad would make up stories every night. He'd tell me stories about just stories, just made up stories. Fantastic, you know, it was fantastic. And I love storytelling too, you know. So that role as a parent is really important, whether you read or, but just feeding into the creative imagination of children is just so critical, isn't it? I think.
Cool. All right. Thanks heaps, Mark.
It's a pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. It's been a really interesting discussion. I've loved it.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, so have we.
Absolutely.
It's been fantastic. And good luck with the current book, with the promoting, and all the ones to come. All the ones to come as well.
Yeah, well, I hope there's more. I've got to get another contract.
The one that's they're formulating at the moment. Good. Thanks heaps.
Good on you.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Mark.
But when that open road starts to call in me, there's something over the hill that I gotta see. Sometimes it's hard, but you gotta understand.